Hey, everybody, and thank you for joining the quick webinar podcast or whatever we're going to call it so far. I haven't decided yet, but we had Mari Cantu on the line from Facebook. She's an exceptional recruiter, someone who I highly value, and we just wrap it about what the future of recruiting is, what candidates can expect, how leadership can really cultivate a brand and voice in this market, and how to make sure that you're in front of the candidate and creating a really positive candidate experience. Now, Mari is a candidate whisperer, if you will, and she is one of the best at what she does. So if you haven't taken a look at this video or any of the snippets and want to get some value, definitely go ahead and click the links below, which will tell you, kind of the breakdown of each part of it and give you the most value right away and quickly if you don't have a lot of time to go through the whole thing. But hopefully enjoy it. Please like, comment, and share below. Talk soon. For everyone here, I've got Mari Cantu on the line here, and she's one of the best recruiters I've ever had the pleasure of working with. We worked together at Cybercoders, had a very successful career, right? She's been somebody who's mentored me as well as many other recruiters. She's even mentored my wife a little bit on some of the things that she's been needing to get through regarding like candidate talks and like candidate whispering, if you will. I feel like candidate whispering is going to be like code ninja, right? Like, oh, are you a code ninja? Are you a candidate whisperer? Like, right? So it's been really, we've had a really great career and length of knowing each other in friendship. She's somebody that I highly value as a person, as an expert in this field. Like I said, she's got the agency side, full 360, as well as going internal and making a name for herself at companies like Apple and Facebook now. And I'll let her kind of go ahead and take it away and just introduce yourself.
So nice to meet everyone. As Will said, I have been in the agency side most of my career, so well over 10 years. Actually wanted to be a stockbroker, and somebody convinced me that this was similar. So kind of. But the fun part that I really loved about learning how to be a recruiter is just the entrepreneurial aspect of building a business from scratch, interacting with people, basically strangers, to be honest, on a daily basis, getting to know them, learning about their skills. I've done tech throughout my career mostly, but I also did a finance and accounting startup, which was fun. But I have to say, like, I really love tech the most just because it applies to everything we do in life. And the engineers are so fascinating to learn from. So I feel like every day I'm learning. Like, it's fun. I definitely have never thought of it as a job, very much a career. And now, like Will said, 10 plus years in, worked at Cybercoders for a long time, worked full desk, loved it, building client relationships, doing the heavy lifting. I've worked through 2 recessions, which has been interesting. And so you kind of see like the differences between a down economy and a booming economy, which we're just coming out of. And then now taking a different approach and going in-house. I was with Apple for about a year, a little over a year. And then I recently joined Facebook, and it's been an amazing transition. Absolutely love it. I didn't think I would. You hear a lot of like rumors when you're in-house or on the agency side, like, oh, don't go in-house, like it's the end of your career.
They're the devil. Don't work with an agency or don't work with an internal recruiter. Like,
I know.
get you the deal.
Yeah. So, and that's just not true. I mean, that could be true for certain companies, but certainly these, top tech companies are all hiring top tech recruiters. And the people that I've had the pleasure of working with have been all stellar. I've learned a ton in a short period of time. And just the camaraderie's also been great. You think you go in house, you like kick up your feet, like you're not on commission. There's no like grind anymore, but it is definitely still hard work and really rewarding as well. So that's where I am today. And I'm based in Los Angeles for our Facebook office that's growing, but I do support our Seattle regions. And then when I was with Apple, I was also based in Los Angeles, but I supported the corporate headquarters, Cupertino. So, and then at Cybercoders LA. So still in LA, loving it.
I mean, we just moved from LA, right? So it's been really sad to like every time we see like a drone footage of LA, we just get like all the feels, right? So it's
I
like, oh
know.
man, I miss it. So, but just to tap into something that you said, like, one of the big things that's been happening is in recruiting is there's a lot of people coming from the agency side going into the internal side who are excellent recruiters, some of the strongest recruiters on the market, and the skill set has like really, the bar has really risen up. And so like, could you kind of, talk about that a little bit about what's going on internally, where, what are you seeing on the competitive side of for internal agency or versus agency recruiters at this time?
Sure. So I think, and this is just from my perspective, but it would be my understanding that's what's happened is as the demand has grown for top tech people, especially at the top tech companies, it's tough to recruit and ramp that kind of number. That some of these engineer growth numbers are pretty high. So to get that level of talent, you can't just rely on kind of a, I don't know, maybe like a traditional HR model where you're leveraging one person to not only manage HR, but also do recruiting. I mean, these are two different tasks. And I think perhaps in the past, at least some of the clients I've staffed for, we're having one person do it all, you
Yeah,
know, and it's just not enough. And the hiring managers are also extremely stretched thin. So I think now the tech companies have decided, like, wow, if we really invest in recruiting, this could really make a huge difference, not only to the types of engineers we hire, to our bottom line, to the types of products we put out, just the
yeah,
whole picture. So it's definitely, I think big companies now, and even medium and small companies, see the reward and benefit of hiring an experienced talent recruiter.
yeah, totally. And like, with the economy shifting the way it is, right, becoming a, an employer market, right, where before it was a very candidate driven market. Candidates could demand whatever they needed, and it was really about who could get the candidate the fastest to
Mhm.
the recruiter, to the team, and get them hired. Do you see a shift in that kind of mentality internally? Like, what's your thoughts on that?
I think it's different, right? I mean, it depends on what size company you are. The big companies, at least from my experience, are always going to have a little bit of advantage because they have a brand name behind them.
Mm,
And I think there is a little bit of folks that are switching from brand name company to brand name company, right? And that's nothing's wrong with that. That's fantastic. For the other folks that are like mid-sized companies or even really up and coming tech startups that also want that talent, that's where it gets a little bit trickier, because there is a lot of tech talent. Let's be clear, there's a lot.
yeah,
It's just tough to uncover, and it's also tough to recruit people from big companies into a startup if they haven't done that, or they already did that, or they have a family now, or mid-sized company where you're working on a really cool cutting edge project, but maybe you don't have that kind of uh, name behind your people know, like, oh, there's really top level engineers here. So that's are some of the challenges, I think, of getting top talent. But there's a lot of talent out there, but there's just still not enough to go around, I
yeah,
think.
totally, totally. Um, it's a really interesting market, being that it is very client driven now, and you've been through a recession before. I think you've been through two, right? Like
Mhm.
two downturns. What are some things that you're seeing that's very similar to what it was like back then, and that's very different to what it was like at that time too? Like, what's your perspective on it, at this time?
I think a little bit different to what we might see happen for the recession that could occur after this coronavirus fully, I don't know if it when it finishes, but what's happening currently is that a lot of industries are being affected. And then people are nervous, right? So it's like, it's really different. Whereas in other recessions, like let's say the '08 one that I last came out of, that really affected like the mortgage industry. It's kind of specific. So there were a ton of people that were laid off, a ton of people that lost their jobs, but that really affected like finance companies or mortgage companies or anybody in that industry and anybody that was tech in that, since I did staff for that. But a lot of other industries were fine,
Mm,
So this one could affect more people. But like I always say, there's always companies that thrive in any sort of downturn. Um, but it's always that balance act of, there's going to be a lot of people that get laid off. Where do we place those people? How do we help them? How do we get them a new home? But then a lot of times it's like people always hang on to their top stars. And a lot of times those are the people that, people want. And
yeah.
how do you get those people, right? Because they're kind of being told, like, we need you, the skeleton crew, will pay you 30% extra if you'll stay for another 6 months or a year.
Yeah, and then like cut 20% of the staff that they may have overhired, or
Right.
that they're getting pushed out already. And it's like, in
Mhm.
some cases, some companies, this is kind of like an advantage. They're like, you know what, we've been wanting to get rid of 20% of the staff, but we didn't know how to. And then
Right.
we like hone in on our top people and then like let them go. As callous as that is and sad as it
Business, yeah.
it's the reality of the situation a lot of times.
Mhm.
So, and like to your point though, like those top people at these companies, they're not getting let go, right? Like if you have a really good developer, like get it, like they're gonna keep that guy. They
They're keeping that person and they're getting
so much more,
rewarded.
right? So with that in mind, I mean, you mentioned a lot about Facebook having a brand and it making it a little bit easier for you to reach out to candidates, and how a brand in that way makes it kind of simpler in a way for you to really get the attraction of a candidate. Now,
Mhm.
you're a candidate whisperer, right? So you build rapport really quickly, and it's your superpower, if you will. Could you kind of go into like, you know, what's the challenges you're facing now, especially with people that are getting laid off, and how are you approaching like the top talent, not just the people who are laid off, but like really getting the talent that Facebook needs? Like what's kind of happening on your end?
Well, I think one thing as a recruiter, or as a service like professional, I always like to think of myself as an agent, is you need to know what's going on in your industry so that you have the talking points when you do reach out or connect with people about understanding where they're at. So, one thing that is going on and always happens a lot of times is a lot of big companies, even if they're not doing layoffs, they've put a hold on bonuses. They've put a hold on promotions.
Mhm.
Now, this is a huge pain point for people because a lot of top performers have worked their butts off this last quarter, this last half, this last year, and they may not get rewarded for that work this time around, or they'll have to do that, repeat it, and hopefully get rewarded next half or next quarter or next year.
Mhm.
So I think it's understanding some of the pain points. And so that way, when you make that connection with somebody, really kind of listening. I think this is a time as a recruiter, you do a lot more listening and a lot less selling.
So it sounds like it's just like kind of just being human, right? Like, like
Yeah, I know. So
I feel
simple.
like you know it's like when you're in the agency side, it's like, oh, like just get them in, like get them interviewing,
Yeah. Hurry up.
just get through the process, get the numbers up. It's all about how many emails you send out, right? It's like,
Right.
like it kind of, there's a big part that I've been preaching for a long time, is that like we've lost that connection, right? Of really like just even understanding the candidate. And I get it, like, your emphasis is on like getting a placement. You want to get that
Right.
as fast as possible. You've got tons of competition, but like at the same time, like I don't know. I feel like it's always been one of those things where you just want to make sure that you're always kind of coming at it with your heart and hand a little bit, right? And just being a real person to another real person, and realizing that kind of has nothing to do with you, right? How are you even starting the conversation, right? Like a lot of people just don't even want to talk to recruiters at the end of the day. Like we're the new real estate agents, right? Like
Right. They're like, leave me alone.
everybody's knocking on that door, right? So, like, how do you even get past that? I mean, again, Facebook being as big as it is makes it a little bit easier, but like, how would you say?
So if I were still on the agency side, I would definitely think about things like calling out the obvious, like I'm sure you've gotten a lot of calls. Like, thanks so much for even taking mine. I'm sure I'm like call number 10 today. Like, you're probably burnt out on people asking you why you're looking or if you got laid off. Like, calling out the obvious and maybe trying to bring a little humor
Mhm.
to the conversation.
Yeah.
Try and separate yourself from the rest of the sales, like herd that's like approaching them like full speed ahead. Um,
I stumbled across your resume.
yeah,
Like,
you're
I
a developer. Are you
stumbled across
looking?
anything.
You're like, seriously, do you have anything else to say? Like, and one of the things I always do, and I think a lot of people I work with find it funny, but I relate a lot of recruiting to dating. And it's like, if you're a man or a woman and you're hitting on, the opposite sex or the same sex, are you going to use the same line every single time? Like, maybe.
Just touching on candidates on a more personal level, like seeing what they're engaging with, seeing what they liked, like on LinkedIn, like all this information is pretty much available to you, regardless
Right.
of your connection level, right? And then following along and, like you said, opening up with, "Hey, I saw you liked that post, and I really enjoyed XYZ, part of it. And what did you think about this?" Right? Like, or just if, and especially if they posted something, like just even having an opinion about what they said
Yeah.
and being excited about what they're saying, and like everybody loves that like button, right? That like button
Yeah.
is like, it's like an endorphin release, right? It's like,
Yeah. It's like, woo!
somebody liked it, and I don't even know this guy,
I
right?
feel validated.
Yeah, exactly, right? But like, and you can't just do that. Like, I mean, obviously, if you do it just to like people's stuff, it becomes very obvious that you're just looking for business. I think now is actually like the best time to go back to old recruiting tactics, which is getting in front of the person and like trying to get them to open up and build that rapport face to face now, because like
Yeah.
everybody's doing it now. So you're like, and it's another thing is like, you've got to kind of get them warmed up and prepped for the fact that they're going to have to do this on a professional level in
Right.
order to get that job. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
like, hey, like practice with me, guy. Like it's gonna be fine, and we'll just do this, and there's no judgment. Like I think that's the big piece, like the no judgment part. Like who, like
Right. Like I'm the guinea pig. Like let me help, and I think you bring up a great point, and it's funny, I didn't really think about it, but yeah, I mean, for all of my people that are currently interviewing, I should be on VC with them and seeing, because that's exactly what I do when I prep people over the phone. I'm listening for cues to
that,
where I can help them, but like on this VC, you can see a lot more.
yeah,
And if I were on the agency side currently, I would be encouraging my hiring managers to schedule quick 15-minute calls, because it's a great opportunity for them to make that connection and for somebody to stay a little bit more interested and excited. you
yeah,
know you can do, as the recruiter, the initial reach out and like, hey, why don't you hop on the phone with Steve's got a great background, see if it's worth an additional 45 minutes, and then 15 minutes isn't anyone's wasted time. I just told someone yesterday, we were doing our kind of prep call for his BC onsite, and I said, you sound kind of like stiff, like kind of like you're being really serious. And he just started laughing, and I'm like, yes, more of that. I was like, let's try the question again with some smiling though. I was like, don't forget to be yourself, because like if you're there on the VC like really uptight and no smiling and no moving of the face, like it's weird. That's not who you are. Like, be you. And people forget that they can be themselves. It's okay. Like, we want to hire you. We know that you're fun, you're cool. We don't expect to hire you as a robot. you
yeah,
know you have to come from the mindset is really, really easily and quickly shift out of like that mindset of like, oh, it's weird, like why aren't we getting replies, and we used to, and it used to be easier, and it shouldn't be this hard. Like, just get rid of that mindset altogether and quickly. Even if you're not currently struggling or you're not currently going through layoffs, you currently need to adapt to what's coming. And
mhm,
what's coming is you need to be relentless in any opportunity that you may have. You need to be relentless about getting that person or doing whatever needs to be done. And that just means looking at things from all different angles. The best question that I got from somebody else I worked with who's very good at the job he asks this all the time, and he asks people, and you can do this. It's a different way of asking for referrals because everybody's like, oh, but I've been through my network already. Who do you know, be specific, that's the best iOS engineer you've ever worked with? Because they all have a favorite person of anybody in these roles, and see who they name. And
Yeah.
you're like, perfect. Can you introduce me?
Yeah.
Then you can go reach out, because then you have an opportunity.
There's like a school of thought that people are coming from, and that where they learned that information, where they learned how to code Node, or where they learned how to, create data structures, like, and that's what the client is assessing, right? Like, so one thing that we've started trying to do is asking, where did you learn to code the way, who's your best mentor in this situation, right?
Yeah.
And then, like, they're going to tell you, oh, well, it was this guy I used to work with, or gal I used to work with at Google. Then you can look up people that were maybe in that person's department, and then just go, oh, like, these people will have learned the same thing from him, like,
Right.
or her.
You can find kind of like the host,
Yeah,
the queen bee, so to
the queen bee,
speak.
yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Then you can find all the minions. And that's important because like you said, it's really people just like you and I, right? We really respect each other and have enjoyed working with each other based on, yes, we've performed, the numbers are there, but it's not just about performance, right? Because other people can do this job well and the numbers will be there, but it's about how we do the job that I think we found respect for each other and know that that particular skill can go on for ages and ages and repeat itself in different environments and can pick itself back up. And that is not the skill that other people have, you
Yeah.
know? So I think with engineering or any other field, it's very similar, like you said. So I love that. That's great. So I think that's one tactical thing. I think it's just like being relentless and kind of like what you already mentioned that you guys are already doing is instead of taking more of a broad stroke approach and like, let's just throw a net out and grab these 50 people, instead, maybe be more targeted and be more sincere in your approach of communicating with those people,
Yeah.
you know? And that way, I think that you'll have even if it's maybe a long-term play, that's okay. Some of the best people are long-term play, you know?
Exactly. Like, I can't even tell you how many times I've, like, tried to hit a candidate at the wrong time,
Mm-hmm.
at the wrong place, because they were just really happy with what they were doing, and it just wasn't the right fit. But then
Right.
coming across them, they like come across some content or something that, like, I've put out, or I just kept in touch with them, and like 2 years later they give me a call, and it's like, hey, like, I really appreciated how we interacted, you never pushed me. And it's not even just them coming to me with their resume, it's them actually presenting candidates that they know.
Mm-hmm.
Like, again, it's that, hey, like, I want to help you out, I respect what you do. And it's paid off dividends, right, and multiple times.
Yeah, you're
So
very good at that. I know having worked side by side for you, that's something you're very, very good at.
learn
A lot of
different.
people, thank you. But a lot of people don't want to take the time, right? They don't have the patience. They're terrible with organization. This is where organization will kick everyone's butt, basically, during this kind of market, where if you stay organized and you track every single thing that you do, in whatever position you're in, hiring manager, in-house HR, recruiting, out external, you're gonna really, it's gonna pay off. It really will. Because just like you said, I mean, there was somebody I just spoke to yesterday, just got him back in the process. We were originally connected in January. We scheduled, then he pulled back because he got promoted. And then I said, okay, cool. When's a good time to reach back out? We were supposed to reconnect in May, but of course I checked back in early. And he was like, perfect timing. And the key thing, and this isn't necessarily tactical, but I do think it's critical, is keeping a really positive attitude when you're speaking with people. When people reject you, don't get mad.
Yeah, exactly. It's not about you. Again,
No.
I tell this to recruiters, especially jumping in the market, and people I've coached. Like, they get so mad when a candidate bails on them, or
Yeah.
ghosts them, or like has a situation, and like, they can't take the job. Like, I had a candidate, I had one of the most, like, right when we started, I had a candidate that was a perfect fit for one of my clients. And my client called me and was like, I haven't talked to a candidate that I wanted to hire on the spot in probably 2 years. And I was like, yes, like, okay, we're going to get this deal. You know, it's happening. And
Yeah.
I looked at Christina, we start dancing and we're like ready. And then we're scheduling up the interview. He gives me a call like the next day and goes, oh yeah, by the way, my company's going public. They just announced it. I'm not going. And I'm like, I like died inside. Like I was like, no. But at the end of the day, you got to be happy for him because
Right.
that's success, right? And so him and I, we still talk. And I checked in on him during coronavirus, like when it was going ham, and everybody was freaking out. How are you doing? And there's a mutual respect there, right?
Right.
There's no animosity at the end of the day. Like you can't be mad at it. Like why would you
No.
be mad about somebody's own life decision? So
Right.
you know,
Dan. I've had several, oh my gosh, so many great stories, but several times where, you're trying to get the deal closed. And it turns out I had one guy who had a child that had a special medication. The reason why he couldn't accept the offer right away is because we needed to make sure that the insurance carrier from the new employer covered the specific medication at the specific price, right? Because it was like an astronomical amount in order for him to leave. Like that was critical. And
yeah.
if you're not taking the time to understand when people kind of like pull back or when they're taking their time to accept and you're like getting annoyed, like you need to talk to people. You need to understand what's going on. Get as much information as you can. I think that's another mistake, whether
Mhm.
it's a booming economy or a recession.
Yeah. And that just goes back down to like really understanding every key motivation to the candidate.
Yeah.
If you don't really understand a candidate's motivations, you're never going to close them. And if you do close them, he's never going to last because or there's a good chance he won't last because you haven't really made the fit. You're just
Right.
pushing for the deal.
Right.
And I think that's where a lot of recruiters, oh man, like I can't even tell you, or even hiring managers do, especially now, right? Because I got a call from one of my candidates who accepted another offer, and she was like, I just feel really bad because this company is really pushing for the number that they're pushing, and it's basically the same number that I'm making now, minus some of the big benefits that I'm getting at my current company. And
Right.
I was like, well, what are you going to do? And she's like, well, I got to accept it. And I was like, no, not really. You can like negotiate. And she's like, well, they made me feel bad about negotiating. And we're like, well, like they were making her feel like as if she was lucky to have a job or have an offer. At the end of the day, like you can't force someone to take something and then like because it's such a good offer.
One thing that people really miss out on is again the big picture. And like unfortunately you and I both know, sadly you can hard close people, right? You could get them to take it, they will start, they will work there for a couple months or a year, but then you've missed out on everything else that you're going to get from them, right? You're not getting any referrals. They're probably looking for a job while they're there, somebody's going to pull them out, right? Like they're not really happy when you call to check in on them or maybe ask for some referrals yourself. They're not picking up.
Yeah,
They don't like you. It's a
exactly.
transaction approach, so you're also missing out on the opportunity to maybe have the chance to work with them again, to
Yeah.
have them get you back in to something else. Maybe they become a hiring manager and they need to build a team out. Like you're just missing out on so much. Like there was a guy recently that we hired that I adore, and he had 5 offers. Guy's sick. So typical. And I said, tell me, like which opportunity do you like the best? Like be honest. Like, I always get the ranking, right? So critical. And he's like, I really want this one. I really want Facebook. And I said, fantastic. What's it going to take to get you on board? And he was kind of breaking down the numbers. And I said, do me a favor. If for some reason we are not able to come up with the package that you want, but you know what it will take, tell us that. Tell us if we can get there or get close, and then we can probably get it for you. You know
Yep.
what I mean? So help people kind of guide them through. If you know that you have their top choice, then you have a shot. If you don't push them.
There's a lot of recruiters out there, like a lot of noise, if you will, about how recruiters need to be more technical, right? And they need to understand technology and like really fit people into the team. Like, I'm not a very technical person, admittedly. I'm like, if you put like some code in front of me, I would look at it like it was Chinese, right?
Yeah.
But like, I understand the components of what we are trying to fill. I know, what we need on the back end versus the front end. I can understand like on a macro scale of like what the details are of what my client might need. In
Mm.
your perspective, do you see recruiting, especially technical recruiting, needing more technical expertise to sift out candidates and identify, like, is there a push for that right now, even at Facebook or even at Apple when you previously were there? Like, what's your thoughts on
Hard to say. Like, I think for sure, if you're technical, that's an advantage. That's fantastic. If you have the expertise in any industry, whether you're recruiting tech and you have a tech background, or you've just taken the time to get to know the nitty gritty of tech, or you're recruiting F&A people and you have an F&A background, fantastic for you. I worked with an amazing recruiter at Apple. Shout out to Brendan, who's very technical, very, very good at the job. But at the same time, you don't have to be that person to be amazing at this job or to find amazing candidates. What you need to be is a great person at gathering information, listening, and being curious. If you can be that person, and then also, like, don't just gather the information and like let it come and go, like write it down, kind of build a log, build a library of information for yourself. Like, I'm like you, like I would never claim to be able to read and write code, but do I know a lot of information about a lot of different things, whether it be Java, C++, C Sharp, Python, object-oriented type coding? What does that mean? DevOps, what does that mean? Do I know a little bit or about a lot of things? Yes. Do I gather a ton of information? Yes. I'm super curious, and I'm always trying to connect the dots. And I'll never claim to be super technical, but what I do have is my bullshit meter. And that is something I think you develop over time, where you start to understand what great candidates say and do and how they talk and do the walk, and what B plus players do,
that?
and B players and C players and C minus players. And
Yeah,
that's what you can figure out of how somebody is maybe really, really knows what they're talking about versus doesn't. And then you can add the other puzzle pieces in there, right? Where they go to school, where have they worked? That certain companies hire top people, or like you said, certain hiring managers hire great people. So if they worked under them, they're probably pretty sick, you know. But you can kind of fill in the blanks from there. But yeah, no, I think it can be helpful. But again, if you're a tech expert and you're a tech recruiter, but you're not a really good person at making connections, gathering information, really giving a shit, no.
yeah.
I don't
Giving a
really
shit.
think it makes a
Giving a
difference.
shit's the biggest part, right? Like, you have
Yeah,
to give a shit. Like, you can't just
yeah,
be like, I just want to make some money. I want
right.
to people. Like, it's just people will read it, and
Yeah,
it's like, I'd rather be the guy that gives a shit and does 10 placements a year than the guy who doesn't give a shit and burns through all his contacts and like thousands of people just to get 50 placements a year, right?
right,
Like, because at the end of the day, that longevity is really short. Like, you're gonna last maybe 2-3 years in your given market. You're gonna have to switch every year trying to find something new. Like, I have limited bandwidth at the end of the day. Like, last thing I want to do is jump from industry to industry to industry just to like make some money. Like, that doesn't make
right.
sense to me, right? Like, it's not a good long-term play. So like at the end of the day, like 10 years down the line, you're just like, you're haggard, right? You've burnt out, you know? So
You've burnt through, like you said, your contacts. And just keep in mind, in whatever market you're working in, whether it's in the US or even global, as a recruiter, specifically tech, I'm sure it's the same in other industries, your name is your brand.
mhm,
So whether you're partnering with an outside agency and you want to use like, Will McGee, people know who you are and people talk.
yeah,
And if you end up using somebody that maybe technically on paper great but isn't a good person, people don't want to work with that person. Your candidates don't want to work with that person. So that matters. Your brand matters. And that's where I think, like, we always going back to the human aspect, it's my favorite. That's why giving a shit matters, because word gets out who you are, what you're about. And that's where, whether you have the tech knowledge, fantastic, but
Yeah.
still be good and care.
Yeah. There's the two departments that get let go first in recessions are marketing and recruiting. Like you're
Mhm.
not gonna you're not gonna need new staff if you're not hiring. So
Right.
you're not gonna need.
Right.
Um,
And
so
everyone's going to be applying. So,
yeah, everybody's applying. Like, and I think I'm a big believer that like employer brand is coming and becoming a major thing in this time because it is all about how you handle the situation, staying in front of the candidates that are in desperation, giving them that good feel. I feel like at the end of the day, like now's the time that you have the advantage
mhm.
over like a Facebook, if you will, to build up your brand
Yeah,
through the noise, right?
absolutely.
Because if you're some small hiring manager, that's if you're a small or hiring manager of a small company, like that's where you win, right? So,
Yeah.
um, in general, though, like where do you see recruiting going after this? Like, what's your, you know, 360-foot view, right, of this whole thing?
Well, that's interesting because I have to say, if you would have asked me 10 years ago, did I ever think that I'd be sitting in a recruiting org of several thousand employees? No, for sure, no. I never thought big companies would put so much time and investment into recruiting. And this has actually happened after the last recession. So I think with any, economy thing, it's like there's going to be a scale back, but then again, as soon as things pick up and whatever's happening that the markets need people, whatever products need to be built, whatever services need to be built. I mean, somebody I know that's been floating around on Instagram, that short list of companies that were developed during the last recession,
Yeah,
which is a sick list,
yeah,
right? So all those people, all those companies need to be built out, all those products need to be built out, and that requires talent. So I think there will be a scale back for sure, always, and then it'll be another increase. Another reason for people to see the value of why hiring great recruiting teams in house or having great agency partnerships is going to be critical to their company being successful. I think more companies already see that,
yeah.
but for sure people will scale back right now because investors aren't investing and so on and so forth, but it'll just resurge again.
Yeah, and like with the emergence of technology and like you
Yeah.
said, like more and more companies actually understanding the value of an internal recruiter. Like
Yeah.
my predictions on this whole thing have been, agency recruiting is gonna take a massive hit and it's gonna change it fundamentally, right? Like I don't think it's gonna go like when 2008 hit, recruiting was still in its not necessarily in its infancy. It's been around for so long, but like there was no real push, even on an internal level, for a lot of these companies to bring on these internal recruiters. The tools weren't there. A lot of the technology was archaic and like old.
Yeah.
You didn't have nobody really had an ATS, right? Like now you
Right.
have like so much out there. You have the AI function of like identifying candidates based on predictive analytics and like where they're going to be at, and then putting them in, and LinkedIn being as robust as it is now, right? And
Mhm.
the availability of information and identifying candidates has gone up like tenfold, right? Like we are in a whole different world today than we were in 2008. Like
Yeah. Oh yeah, night and day.
so it's like a completely different world. Like, do you think that agency recruiting will continue being this contingency level business where like I found a candidate, you want to hire him, or like, hey, I've got this candidate with 7+ years of experience and that could really do really well in your company, email, like where do you see that kind of going? Like how's
Yeah,
that?
that's interesting. I would say that because when I was on the agency side, my whole career, I did early stage startups, seed, Series A, Series B, through mid-sized companies, but mostly startups. And I think those companies, because of how the funding comes in and how they need to actually ramp and build out teams, that will always be a need. That may not be the need for every single company if you're structured that way. But keep in mind, a lot of agencies are extremely successful based on their consulting platform.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that will always be there, right? That short-term hiring need, that's essential for businesses. It's a completely different budget associated with that. As far as direct hire recruiting, it could scale back, honestly, because as mid-sized companies, but again, it would have to be the adoption for mid-sized companies wanting to invest in those larger in-house teams to
Mhm.
support that. I think startups will always want to kind of grow, ramp, and then again, just a series of a startup, then they get an exit, right? Or maybe the product isn't successful, they have to lay off, then you move to another team, right? So I think there will always be a need for agency recruiting. Will it be as lucrative on the direct hire side? I don't know, but on consulting, for sure.
Yeah, I think consulting, contract work, if you're
Always.
like coming in
Temp
and saying,
work.
even if you're even on the agency side, right? Like
Yeah.
if you're a small business, like right now we're pivoting to basically
Right.
say, hey, look, if you're a small agent, if you're a small business and you don't have a recruiting function, but you're still hiring and you still have
Right.
these metrics to hit, but like your VC is telling you, hey, like you got to clamp down on numbers because your run rate is going to have to like last you, like let's not take your 20%, let's not do a $30,000-$50,000 deal for a senior engineer that you need to hire 3 times, right? Like let's bring us on as a contract or a short-term period, and we can come on and do this on a either on-demand basis where it's hourly for us to bill you personally, or we can come out and build out a whole employer brand strategy, set up your ATS, do all the things that you guys need to do that is like having an agency team or an internal team, but you're not spending the $200,000-$300,000 for 2 recruiters, right?
I think there'll be a lot of that, actually, honestly. Well, I think there'll be a lot more of that, if they can partner, especially with someone like yourself that they trust, that knows the industry, that's well vested in their interest. I think there'll be a lot of that. I mean, but it's like sales is sales, right? Sales will always exist till the
And
end of
that's
the till the
that's
end.
my plug too. So hey guys, if you guys need any help, I'm here to help out.
Yeah, it will always, always, always be there. There will always, always be a need for sure.
Yeah.
But I think times change, right? I mean, look what happened out of the last. Gosh, I mean, who would have thought ZipRecruiter came out of the last 10 years? Phenomenal company,
Yeah.
crushing it. I think there'll be more innovative ways that people will tackle recruiting for sure. More automated ways. I get websites from candidates all the time about these really cool websites, the platforms, which are still great, but nothing will replace something like what you and I do in terms of going and
Talking,
finding.
like
I will
really getting
never
the
be
relationship. Yeah.
replaced.
You
No.
can't do it. You can't replace it with AI. You can't replace it with conversational marketing. Like just like you can't replace a person to come in and close a deal on your sales team. Like you're never gonna give that to a robot. Like it's not gonna happen. Like
No.
you might be able to do that even if you scale your team. Like you're able to like put 5 people on to handle 15 hires a month, right? Like that's still like you still need those 5 people.
Mm.
Like, you're gonna definitely need those 5 people to make those deals happen, right? And I don't think we're gonna that personal contact, relationship driven business is what makes really good recruiters successful. Like again,
Right.
finding match versus just trying to close a deal. And but yeah, I think a lot of these recruiters that are in the market right now just to make that quick buck. Like I said it earlier, I think 50% of the market, 50% of the recruiters in this business are going to be out by the end of the year. Like they're going to be gone.
Yeah, because it's going to be super hard, like we talked about. They're not going to want to do it,
Yeah,
and they're not going to have any clue of how they did it before. you
they-
know?
exactly.
So,
Mari, thank you so much for your time.
yeah,
I really
thank
appreciate
you.
it for doing this. This is my first one, so hopefully it kind of it resonated with some people. People got some
I hope
value.
so. This is so fun.
Where do we find your information if like a candidate wanted to reach out to you and like make a really good impression on you? Like,
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. So under Mari Cantu, my Gmail address is maricantu33 at Gmail. My work email is mcantu@fb.com. But yeah, always ping me, and I'm happy. I always end up switching to the cell phone, and we'll just hop on text. I'm a big texter, and Shout out to the Snapchat camera, loving this thing for all Zoom. This is like makes my life so fun at home now. But yeah, please, I'd love to, happy to speak with anybody, connect with anyone. I've had relationships in LA for tech that go back well over 10 years, and I love anybody that I've worked with. It's been an amazing ride so far. So, and there's so much more to come.
Yeah.
So,
I'll add one more place where you can find her. It's on Cascades Live
oh,
Instagram feed.
yeah.
Just shout out Mari. I'm sure she'll see you.
Oh yeah, yeah. My Instagram, that's right. I'm a huge, huge dancer. So that was
Well,
amazing.
thank you so much, Mari. Have a great rest of the day, and we'll
You
talk soon.
too.